Today, we're really going to be concentrating on shared leadership and shared goals and outcomes, and talking about who's building those dashboards out there together, and how are they including youth and families in the development of our goals and our outcomes, and how do we embed youth and family in our leadership structures? How do we unite ourselves, but also include them? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And then we're actually going to have a presentation on policy and how the policy process impacts what we're all doing here today. It either incentivizes us to unite, or it can create worlds where we aren't incentivized to unite. And so we're going to have a conversation about what impact policy has on all of us. So I really thank you for being here. It's just so meaningful to see everyone every morning. And I want to thank our sponsors once again for sponsoring. We can't do this without them and without all of you. And I have an announcement, which is tomorrow morning. We weren't sure who was going to open us up tomorrow morning, but one of our newly appointed special education commissioner, youth commissioner for the state of California, Saran, who's sitting right here in front. You want to stand up? She is going to be opening us up tomorrow morning, and they are the first voting youth commissioners on the Special Education Commission. And the day that we swore them in, which was recently, we voted in the new Special Education Director for the state of California, and both of our youth members voted with us. So we'll hear from Saran in the morning. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Richard to tee us up today. You've already met Richard.
All right. Let me bring you back. Thank you for that. Thank you. So I have a quick question then. Are we more engaged than we were 2 minutes ago? The building and maintaining of healing relationships and a healing community is largely found in the sharing of empathy and gratitude. This essential understanding, one which has come into focus for me only in the last decade, is really the basis for my reflections this morning. I do have one invitation for us at the outset. As you settle in, if you'll give me your undivided attention for the next 25 minutes or so, we can change our brain chemistry just as we've begun to do just now. We can activate a little more oxytocin, a little more serotonin, and experience the joy of working together and making new connections. What I'd like to explore with you in the next few minutes are three interrelated questions. What is wholeness? Why does it matter to our work? What does it have to do with healing? What is the relationship between wholeness and breaking barriers in our delivery system? And how do we achieve it? We use the words integration, collaboration, and partnership frequently in healthcare and in the healing arts. And while these words are useful, I have in the last decade come to believe that we have not grasped the full measure of their intent, particularly the word integration. We have given much time and lip service to whole child or whole student services without putting in the right type of work in the right places or the right ways, which will actually transform us to be a whole healing system. Deep in the distant places in our galaxies, there is a location which astronomers and quantum physicists suggest space and time merge. A place where time is no longer linear, space is no longer bound by the same physical laws that are present elsewhere in the galaxy. This is most often referred to as singularity, the absence of duality or separateness. Relatedly, most of us have long believed that the Earth revolves around the sun. This is not entirely true, I learned. A few years ago, I discovered that the sun emits vast plumes of gas and wave-like rays, which actually form a bubble. They call this a heliosphere. As the Earth revolves, it is always within this heliosphere or container, which holds the Earth and other planets and stars, and within its magnetic winds and its unparalleled warmth, one system contained and fed by one sun, The relationship of the earth to the sun is not one planet to a star. It is one entire galaxy connected to countless other galaxies, all integrated into one. Metaphysical and native cultures across the world have concepts and long-held beliefs that two or more spirits can and do occupy the same mind and sometimes the same body. Some religious and faith systems, particularly those in the Far East, have long understood that duality is an artifact of this world, an earthbound construct that in a very real and far larger sense, you and I are all, and all life are singular, one entity. Think of the person you are most close to in this life. Could be a parent, spouse, child, or that kindred friend you've known and loved since the moment you first encountered each other. You sometimes finish one another's sentences, love the same activities, even share a telepathic-like communication link perhaps. One mind, one essence. I imagine this is what that larger synchronistic thing must be like. Ponder with me for a moment the numerous examples of whole systems that exist throughout the universe. Consider briefly the biological and physical systems of which we ourselves are a part. I failed chemistry my freshman year of college and nearly failed physics, at which point I knew for the first time I was not going to be a psychiatrist. While failing physical science academically, I was, however, falling in love with a karmic partner who would soon become my companion and wife of now 41 years, and the person who far and away has been my greatest teacher in life. I sat next to her in Physics 101 3 times a week for an entire semester, attracted in ways I could not then understand nor today explain, and yet I missed the lectures from a talented, smart professor who was, in hindsight, teaching me not only about the laws of physical science like gravity and attraction, but about the much grander nature of oneness that would hold me and the woman who would soon marry me and who would give life to 3 amazing children. One family. Oneness is most clear within our biological systems, with very natural integration of cells, the integration which occurs across systems at molecular levels. It sustains our organs and the connectedness of those organs to one another in an integrated balance and dance of survival and reproduction and sustained growth. When we are sick, it is because a part of our whole body, mind, spirit system is not functioning in alignment or synchrony or has become disconnected in function or structure to its other interdependent parts. And its parallel organs and tissues rush to its aid with enzymes or oxygen or chemicals to heal itself because it recognizes its interdependence as a matter of wellness. Consider the water we drink. H2O. The air we breathe is actually a mixture of many compounds of multiple chemical formulas. The sugar in the orange juice this morning that makes it so sweet, C6H12O6. Most importantly, chocolate is an integration, C7H8N4O2. Chocolate's yummy. Chocolate and caramel are better. And chocolate and caramel and pecan is far better. Integrated yumminess. The atoms and molecules across the universe somehow seem to figure out that they best get in alignment and connect with each other in order to be whole cells, and those cells had better align and connect and work harmoniously with each other, or the organ or substance or material will not form, or if already formed, it will quickly perish. And those organs or compounds, materials will connect together in a sometimes complicated, sometimes simple system, each organ or element performing its designated functions, but always in service to and connected intimately to the whole. One organism, integrated. Oneness is way bigger than the photons, neutrons, and atoms, however. I love this image. A traumatized river flowing from the north into a healthy partner from the east, we'll call it. And as they merge and connect and integrate, what will happen to the trauma of the southbound waterway? A few hundred yards downstream, it will heal as it becomes fused and merged together. Any musicians in the house? What is a melody? A linear succession of notes with a certain pitch. And what makes music harmonious? A second line of notes, arranged and played in and around the first line, and a third and a fourth, and on sometimes. And the ultimate beauty and wholeness of music is its integrated relationship of notes one to another. Each instrument in an orchestra might be useful, of course, but none reaches its full potential outside the orchestra itself. Imagine Beethoven's Fifth Symphony with only percussion. Right? Music is among the best examples of wholeness. Our entire metric system, the numbers that drive virtually every aspect of our commerce, industry, and technology, are likewise premised in relational wholeness. What is an integer? A whole number. What is a non-integer? A fraction, a disconnected, disintegrated, fractured, and therefore incomplete number. Finally, and most grandly, the universe writ large, of course. The sun, moon, and stars, each in harmonious distance from one another, and even when they collide in their integrated wholeness, it leads to birth and renewal. New stars, new planets, new universe. The point I missed then in that freshman physics course in 1981, but which has since come into perfect focus, is that every single thing in the universe, all matter of all types and kinds, is a composite of other elements and substances. There is no such thing as separateness then. Singularity and parallelism are natural and omnipresent and essential to the very fabric of life. Integration then is wholeness. It is the natural state of all things. It is the state of completeness, well-being, health. And so if the metrics and the matter of our entire universe and the natural elements and systems around us and the very bodies and minds which are us are singular and synchronistic, why do we sit professionally in child and family serving systems that are not? And you may be asking yourself now, what does all of this have to do with serving children, youth, and families? Yesterday you heard Melissa Stafford Jones and some friends outline eloquently a blueprint for a reimagined service ecosystem. And among the three major adaptations required of this system, a new vision and mindset is paramount, without which the organizational and functional parts of the new system are unlikely to be created or to endure. These three deeply interrelated and concurrent focal points are what make reforms more successful, and it starts with alignment of that vision and leadership. And alignment demands oneness by and among leaders. It's about how we are with one another. Jim Farrell, the author of The Anatomy of Peace, has suggested, quote, the very point of personhood is recognition. I'm going to challenge you here. This is pretty metaphysical. This is not easy understanding. I've read this book multiple times. The very point of personhood is the recognition that we are embedded with and formed by others, which is to say that we are not individuals at all. To be a person is precisely not to be an independent self, but to be integrally connected to the human family, as much an expression of that family as a member of it. We can never see another person, continuing, as to see another person would be to see the very separateness that is antithetical to personhood. A person is not an individual, but a relation. Relation is the actual encounter wherein the distinction between me and other, or us and them, evaporates. It is the moment where I move beyond seeing. Our fundamental choice then, according to Jim Farrell, is not between how we will see each other, but rather between merely seeing one another on the one hand and actually offering ourselves for true encounter. Close quote. The implications of this singularity in how we see ourselves and others are powerful for our shared reform work. Each of us has been professionally reared in a silo, fragmented by policy, money, code, and compliance. And it's important to understand that we built this system, and in building a system which is disintegrated, we set in motion a delivery of care and supports and services which is inherently today traumatizing to the very people we seek to help and heal, and to us as healers. In pondering on this Jim Farrell quote a few years ago, it dawned on me, I can spend all of my professional time trying to coach, mentor, whisper, and advocate for change with policymakers and department leaders who are responsible for the system and continue to experience frustration at both the slow pace and the often poor policy, or I can follow the counsel I would often give to my clients and patients, namely, I can change my thoughts, behavior, and actions inside that system. The reason this is imperative, or the reason this imperative for a reimagined ecosystem exists, is that 40 or 50 years ago, we decided in government that it was necessary or useful to create a Department of Social Services, a Department of Education, a Department of Mental Health, and a Department of Public Health, and a Department of Probation or Corrections, et cetera, et cetera. And we said to ourselves, here are your components and elements, and to another we gave other components and resources and the rules that accompany those resources, and on, and we've been pursuing, ironically, since that very day, a reconnecting of those same systems, which we purposefully disconnected over many years of disintegrated policy work. And we also found, in this evolution to disconnection, not surprisingly, is that the more entrenched those individual systems became as institutions, concretely set in our minds, frameworks, and individual structures, the more immune or insulated we became from one another and from the actual processes of collaboration. And here's the bottom line. The more distant we became from the wholeness of healing, the less effective and more traumatizing we became to those who suffer. We fragmented our health system, and in the process robbed it of its essential capacity for healing, so much so that now we have class action lawsuits and federal receiverships and acts of Congress and little Hoover reports, all designed to force us to integrate and behave in what should be a natural, organic way. And then we wonder when the healers and helpers within and around those systems can only do this work for 5 or 8 or 12 years before they're exhausted of their own secondary trauma from trying to help integrate or make whole children and families while their own systems are not whole. To say nothing of the complaining we have done about one another's components in the system, which reminds me of one of my favorite jokes. A therapist says to a man, your wife has complained that you never buy her flowers. What do you say to that? Patient responds, of course, well, to be honest, doc, I had no idea my wife even sold flowers. Right? And so this idea of wholeness, so foreign to us now in the helping fields, must be reclaimed. And in order to do that, we must disrupt the factors, ideas, and structures that currently keep us insulated and fragmented, the factors and structures that keep us from being whole. We must seek to expand not only our smartness about how systems work, but what the author Donna Zohar referred to groundbreakingly 20 years ago to as spiritual intelligence. Is it possible that the solution to this problem is more spiritual than technical? I made a pledge to myself a few years ago that I would no longer use the plural form of the word system. System with an S on the end is nothing more than disconnected elements of the wholeness that healing demands. I understand that forming, even imagining a single structure or entity is counterintuitive today, precisely because we built such disconnected and layered individual systems. So learning the complexities of one is a challenge, but learning the multiple system languages of our partners and processes is nearly impossible, and yet necessary. Today, we are awash in an ecosystem of fragmented health and human services, lost in a system that cannot heal its communities. Understand, we cannot fully and effectively heal our young people unless and until we are healed ourselves. One cannot give what one does not possess. The more we cling to needing to control the processes like how we assess, how we share information and data, how we manage revenue and expenses, the more these processes come to define the delivery system as scarce, law-complying, risk-reducing, and ultimately dehumanizing. The values which now guide our model in healthcare, unfortunately, are no longer easing of suffering, caring, holding sacred healing space, communicating empathy, expressing vulnerability. The prevailing values have become risk reduction, documentation clarity, time efficiency, information privacy. Like all mental models, we have built our service delivery mindset on ideas and beliefs and values and principles, and we seek tirelessly with well-intended advocates and lawmakers to reform it. We reform largely through an evolving, expanding set of codes, and we've asked and demanded of taxpayers to give us the resources to build the model remodel it, and then deliver services through that model. And over the last 50 years, we've passed more and more reform efforts, adding to that deeply codified delivery system until today, the very ideas and principles that established our original model have become so weighted down with prescription and rules that they have become the model itself. How many clinicians would answer the question, what is your job, with something akin to, my job is to finish these assessment forms and get them in on time. My job is to get my court reports done on time. Our job is to heal. This invites us to recognize that the relationships must be equal to or greater than the rules. The rules are no longer guardrails to our healing. We've created a service ecosystem where we believe the rules are the healing itself. One quick example here is child and family teaming here in California. Family group models of teaming have demonstrably proven effectiveness, but sadly, every time we implement one and try to refine it, we layer additional rules onto the healers, which effectively contaminate the teaming process and turn it into little more than an encounter to share information or finish a form. And we remove the original intent of that teaming process, which is to hold sacred space with young people, communicate empathy and vulnerability, and let them know that we see them in their suffering. Any model built on these values and drivers and beliefs is not one that can ever will heal. We do not heal because a form was filled out on time. No one ever got better because their medical record was complete. We have in essence laid aside the essential healing principles and practices and trained an entire set of industries serving children and families in ways that communicate that the primary purpose is to comply with the laws that are initially intended only to support the healing process. You understand the distinction? The model has become flawed because the principles that now drive it are rooted not in healing. And so this all can be quite discouraging, right? To say the least. I am, like you, however, hopeful to a fault. Hopeful that we can, with transformative leadership, replace reaction with reflection, compliance with compassion, enforcement with empathy, rules with relationships. My personal mission, replace HIPAA with healing. And this brings me back to the Zen of whole person leadership. The first step is to begin to see and to identify ourselves in a different light, to alter the very professional identities which we use to describe ourselves, not as one part of a system willing to share or collaborate with my partners, but instead as one among and with others, as one who is them, present with them in this ongoing effort, and to recognize that the budgets and the people and the functions we do and the buildings we occupy and everything else is and must be of one purpose: the well-being of all youth and caregivers in our county, our state, our world. I believe there is a subtle but critical vision-changing difference between being a component of a system and being the system. We must begin to consistently identify ourselves not as the rules or codes or mandates prescribe. We are not the titles that boards or commissions give to us. We are humans. We are healers. Each of us must understand that those other youth in someone else's service sector are an incident or an action away from entry to my part of the system. The kids getting special ed services are soon to be knocking on the door of my probation system, for example, made more vulnerable when they do not get the timely services they need today. Likewise, graduating from high school is less likely when safety and permanence are compromised. The examples of interdependence of systems are endless. We talked about a few yesterday. You'll hear more today and tomorrow. When I truly understand the oneness of leadership, I come to recognize that in engaging with my partners, I'm not helping them be better for those they serve. I am preventing the trauma of those young people having to enter my service sector. And I would add, saving my budget impact in the process. My success then is concretely and firmly contingent on the success of my partners. Among my moments of insight, in the spring of 2012, my Placer County System of Care Managers and Assistant Director and I were holding a semi-annual strategic planning retreat, and it was time to begin. But I was on the phone on a call in the parking lot with another director or my boss, I don't recall. And my management team was gathered in the conference room and had begun to review the day's agenda and do a little engagement work, as was our custom. As I walked in and took a seat at the table, trying hard not to disrupt their just initiated activity, I looked around the room at these 7 people, and I was immediately struck with a vision. In my mind, I saw instantly all the bosses I had ever had since I'd started working in this field. all of my supervisors over the prior then 22 years, and I was aware of the feelings I had had about them that had formed over the course of my time, the times when I had judged them for being wrong with strategy or plan, how poorly I thought they had behaved at times, as well as feeling the feelings of deep appreciation and respect for them, for their courage to lead, their willingness to coach me and to lead me simultaneously, both sets of feelings. And I realized in my mind's eye at that moment that every single one of them had been given to me as a gift, and that each of them was a relationship in a choreographed journey to allow me to be in a place I was then in, leading and coaching these 7 exceptional souls on our shared system-wide journey, along with 216 other teammates in one integrated system. I likened it to a life review. Fortunately, it didn't last too long. I found myself fighting back emotions of gratitude at this profound realization that some force over the prior 22 years had been at work on my behalf, preparing me for that very moment in time when and where our little team could be gathered to try to make plans to make our system even better. We talk often of solutions being either technical or adaptive. What if part of the solution, again, is spiritual? I don't think it's a coincidence that we are gathered in this room today, all 400 of us. Every professional encounter, and for some our personal lives, have led us here, when we can be present here and learn from each other about how to transform the way we serve and the way we define and sustain our delivery system. Imagine a moment when every county in California is organized, let's call it a health and human well-being community, where key education professionals, mental health, welfare, social service, developmental services, probation, First Five, all supported teams from a co-located, collectively managed and led system. And within that system, cross-divisional teams of fiscal and program leaders. And when any and every youth or parent contacts that system, they are greeted by a youth or parent with living expertise who could and would instantly be able to engage and begin healing. This seamless system demands that we behave and act in response to the distinct functions of our departments, but not separate from them. Do we understand in policy and practice what this means, to be distinct but not separate? As we participate today and hear some really smart voices talk about emerging effectiveness, I hope we'll hold simultaneously to this one realization, that wholeness is healing. Integrated persons are healthy persons. And any hope we have for an integrated delivery system rests in our capacity to see ourselves and other parts as the same. Same kids, same information, same staff, same budgets. We must see ourselves not only as the same, but as one. Finally, let me close with a personal story. I was in the spring of 1970 convinced that 10-year-old Richard was going to be a Hall of Fame baseball player. My family had 2 years before become disrupted by the divorce of my parents. My mother, a talented woman, had been raising 5 babies for the last 14 years and was quickly overcome. A little alimony and child support was insufficient. And so a job was imperative. Each of my siblings managed her or his trauma a little differently. And we were quickly in a swirl of chaos and behavioral discord that manifested itself in many ways. And fortunately, we were also surrounded by a caring and compassionate and aware set of friends, bound by a faith system which wrapped itself around my mother and her 5 wounded children. And one of those healers was Hal Schmidt. On a summer evening, my mother too busy making dinner after work and my siblings occupied in other pursuits, I was, as usual, unobserved as I stood in the on-deck circle at the local ball field. As I picked up my bat and began to prepare to hit next, I glanced behind the backstop, and there between the bleachers stood a tall young man. There was Hal. Much younger than the Hal in this photo. Raising 2 small kids with his wife, they lived near the ballpark. I immediately wondered to myself, why was Hal Schmidt here? I looked around to see if one of the other kids from church might be on the outfield or a member of the other team. I knew none of my teammates attended our church, and I quietly but quickly realized that, in fact, Hal Schmidt had left his little family that night for a few minutes to wander over to watch me play baseball, to see me. I mattered to Hal. I have never forgotten him. And the lesson he taught me that day about the power of one person influencing one young child. Thank you for indulging me this morning and for considering my invitation to oneness of mind and heart. I hope that this moment can continue a progression towards new history for California and for us as teammates, the time when we can choose to ignore the artifice of separateness and to embrace fully the singularity of us. Thank you.